And now, live from the Tri-Cities of North Carolina, this is the Forest City Tribune Podcast with John Thomas Hill. Tonight's topic, Ferguson, ISIS, the media, and you. And now here's your host, John Thomas Hill. And welcome to the show, everybody. Big week in the media. Big week in two big stories in the news. Ferguson, Missouri, and the protests, which thankfully are starting to wind down. And some peace is finally coming to that community, we hope. Also, ISIS beheaded an American photojournalist, James Foley, this past week. And President Obama had some very strong comments yesterday about it. My take about the Foley situation with ISIS, what can we legitimately do about it? That it doesn't involve a full-out military campaign. But let's talk. But in this segment, we're going to talk about the media reaction to this, and the media has not exactly been doing too well lately. Not just Fox, but CNN. And I don't watch MSNBC because I don't have it on my cable system, but I've heard they're pretty much like CNN. They're covering it. They tend to be more left wing than CNN is. CNN's sort of, I guess you could say, probably all out of it, but all basically in the middle, I guess. But my concern, there's some big blow-ups that happened on CNN this week. First of all, Kweli Talib, or is that the guy's name? I can't remember. I'm kind of blanking right now. He's a rapper, and he was out in Missouri, at Ferguson, with the protest movement there. And he had an interview with Don Lemon yesterday. Now, I'm pretty sure that this guy has been interviewed live on television before. And normally how it is, the producer's the one that handles all of the discussions and whatnot. So you don't usually talk to the host that much on television until you actually are brought up on screen with the host. You may get a little time to talk with them before you go live. And this was a situation where it was actually Don Lemon and Kweli Talib, I think that's the guy's name. I apologize if I'm screwing that up. And it basically was a situation, it went straight downhill because, as a matter that the media coverage was, I don't know the whole details, but it basically, I didn't watch because I didn't want to, I'm so sick of these constant talking heads that I really don't say a whole lot. And the bigger situation happened when Larry Elder came on with another liberal African American talking head, and they had a little shouting match because Larry Elder was talking about the typical conservative points about, if there were fathers in the home, if there were blah blah blah, and then the welfare, blah blah. It's sort of like he completely went off the question. So the media's kind of screwed up in a lot of ways. First of all, they didn't really hammer home the point that it took Ferguson police several days to release the name of the cop that was involved in this shooting. And when they did, they basically said, well, Michael Brown was involved in a robbery shortly before then, allegedly involved in the robbery shortly before then. Didn't tell us anything about what happened, okay? And the eyewitness reports have all been confused and such. And the big problem I have with the coverage in Ferguson is that there's so much gotcha stuff going on. It's all they're all trying to make this story and I think in some cases almost as big as the LA riots 22 years ago. And that in my mind is a very dangerous thing, because we live in much different times than we did back in 92. I remember the LA riots in 92, watching them on TV, watching it on CNN, and wondering, is this going to go nationwide? There were reports that there were some riots, I think, in Newark and Detroit and maybe in other places, but they never really got out of control. They never really became nearly as big as what we saw in LA. Now there's a history of racism in the area that's been documented on many websites and such. I don't even have to go into it, because all you got to do is do a Google search, use Google News, and if you've been following it, you know what I'm talking about. My biggest concern about what's been going on in Ferguson is the fact that there's really not been a whole lot of critique about the way that the police have really just been covering up. They've not actually come out and said cover up for the most part. They basically have been very cautious about using that word, because it took them forever to break out the name of the cop. They just now recently released the actual report, and they didn't say a whole lot about it. And it just seems to me that they're not really going after the police department and saying, hey, you got to be more forthcoming. My biggest concern is, in this day and age where with the gotcha media, and you don't have time to digest what really has gone on. And we're getting the Rashomon effect, where it's sort of like you got all these people, they're all different perspectives, and there are video cameras sticking it up in a YouTube and all that, and the fact is there's no video whatsoever of the actual shooting itself, or at least it's not been posted yet, or but as far as I know, the police haven't said they've got any video. And the Ferguson police do not have at this time, but they may be about to get it, but they don't have cameras worn on the police officers like many police departments are getting these days. So it's important to remember that the eyewitness accounts are what the prosecutors are going to have to work off of. And there's so much going on, and the media is feeding off that. They're trying to grab every little morsel of the story. And in the race to be first, like with Fox, they had this story about the officer got hit in the face by Michael Brown. But that's been proven to not be true. And is this a simple matter of, was this an accuracy, or was this an outright lie? And where did that lie come from, if it is a lie? Did it come from the Ferguson PD, or does it come from somebody going, hey, let's invent a story to kind of keep the interest going? I don't know. It may be a while before we do know. And if it is planning a story, that says a lot about whoever planted the story. Did this guy actually get hit? If not, then why was it reported on? Why did it get airtime? And it was Fox News that said it. There were other conservative news agencies that reported it as well. But the fact is, traditional media outlets dismissed the story. And in some cases, I think Fox is sort of backtracking now from that. But here's the thing important to understand. In the old days, back, say, in the 60s and the 70s, and even to the 90s to a degree, you still had to rely on traditional journalism. Yeah, you could watch the riots take place via helicopter, but you still had to get the video from the ground level sent to the station or the satellite truck to see what was really going on. And now, the one thing that's really troubling about the situation in Ferguson is that the Ferguson Police Department actively prevented the media from doing their job. They arrested several reporters. They harassed many more others. And the interesting thing is, back during the Watts riots in the late 60s, reporters would be embedded with police officers and to get the story about what's going on. But the perception of the media has changed a lot. I don't know if it was because of Watergate or other things, but it seems like now that any position of authority automatically distrusts the media to the point where they're kind of hiding things. It used to be that presidents would have a cadre of reporters that they trusted, that they knew, hey, if this is off the record, we're not going to talk about it. I don't want you to put it in the newspaper, at least for right now. But at the very least, hey, this is out there. This is something that may be coming down the line. They would even float ideas to the reporters to say, hey, this is... And somehow along the line that changed. Was it Watergate? Was it Woodward and Bernstein sticking their nose in the business where President Nixon didn't want it to be? Or was it the fact that Nixon was paranoid of the media, hated the media, and neither Spiro Agnew didn't really care for the media either, and that sort of started the trend of automatically hating the media. The Republicans throughout the 70s and into the 80s would constantly talk about liberal media bias, but in fact, there really wasn't nearly as bad. It's just they wanted their point of view put out there to basically, instead of being a opinion, to be considered fact. And if you've listened to this show before, you've heard me talk about the fairness doctrine the FCC used to have, and why, when it was dropped in the 80s by the Reagan administration, it really changed everything. I'm not a fan of Reagan as a president. I don't think he's the greatest of all time like some people. But you can say this. Reagan definitely made his mark on this country for better and, in a lot of cases, for worse. One of them is pushing the FCC to eventually drop the fairness doctrine. What the fairness doctrine was, basically, if you expressed an opinion during a news program, you had to get the other side of the story. So that all sides... So basically, essentially what it did was it assured that the story would be covered on pretty much all the sides that were available. Usually two sides, or in some cases maybe more, depending on the story. So if it got political, at the very least you knew the station would give you both sides. Did it always hold up that way? Probably in some areas. Some stations that were owned by more liberal-thinking, liberal-leaning owners would lean more liberal. Some conservative owners would lean more conservative. But generally, you had to obey the fairness doctrine, or you would be in risk of losing your FCC broadcast license. In the 80s, that went away. That's why you have conservative talk radio. And can I take a tangent for just a second? For those of you who listen to conservative talk radio and think, oh, they're telling the truth, have you ever considered for a moment that their main job is to rile you up? Okay? Their main job is to piss you off, to make you mad, so that you will listen to their show, and to buy into their storyline, essentially. And I've listened to a lot of conservative talk radio in recent weeks and such. And one of the one of the not topics. One of the things that I keep coming back to me is, for the most part, it's the fact that Obama can do nothing right. Now, let's face it. Presidents are not perfect. We don't expect them to split the atom with their bare hands. We don't expect them to be perfect. But we do think that most presidents have the nation's best interest at heart. Or at the very least, the president is competent because we elected him. Hey, we're the ones that elected the guy. But conservative media have you thinking Obama's so evil. He's this evil plan or something like that. It's like, I hate to break it to you, but if you look at Obama's governing compared to Obama's campaign in 2008, he's governed more from the middle than anything else. Has he cut the deficit? Yes. The economy has improved in some ways, although, frankly, in some cases it hasn't, because we don't have as many jobs as we should have, but that's beside the point. Considering I'm still jobless and really struggling right now. But the problem is, and this is very important, is that Obama missed an opportunity back. I know I'm getting off on a tangent, but he missed an opportunity when he had both houses of Congress to really lay the hammer down. Instead, he wanted to play the statesman. He wanted to be the guy, hey, I can work with the Republicans, when they had no intention of working with him. Nothing got done. Not realistically, except for Obamacare and a few other things. The stimulus package was sort of halfway done, sort of. But yet, what happened in 2010? Tea Party came to power. Well, the Tea Party changed everything, and the conservative media rushed up to embrace the Tea Party. We all know this. They rushed up because it gave them a new bad guy. Not only were the Democrats evil, but now the Republican establishment was the evil guys. And if you've ever looked at the whole thinking of it, first of all, the Republican establishment, basically guys and gals have been there for several terms. They're the traditional conservatives for the most part, but yet the Tea Party, they're way out on the right wing. And even before then, even before the rise of the Tea Party, in a lot of cases, they were farther right than traditional moderate conservatives. The traditional conservative, you don't really see the one that would reach across the aisle to work with Democrats, to compromise, to actually get stuff done. You give a little here, we'll give a little there, we'll get something done. That doesn't happen anymore. And the media doesn't expose this. Or if they do, they're not doing a good job of it because it gets swept under the rug. But I've got way off on a tangent about this. It's one of those things. I really honestly think that the media has to do a better job of reporting on a story, not by constantly bringing you breaking news updates all the time, but by taking the time to find out all sides of the story and presenting the story in a concise manner. And if you're going to have an expert, don't have two guys shouting at each other, two women or man and gal shouting at each other. Just have a conservative and a liberal. Have a conservative on for a segment, then have a liberal on a segment. And here's the thing, get actual people that are on the scene. talk to journalists and all this. It's like, do they have to take a page out of sports journalism? At a sports talk radio? You know, one person at a time you're going to interview. Okay? These panels may be fun and all this, but they're not real journalism. They're what they're doing is just it's all about opinion pieces. It's all about talking head television, essentially. And in a lot of ways, it's people who have these point of views, who want to get them across. It's not actual journalism. It's actual, hey, I got a point of view I want to talk about, and I want to get my talking points out there and all that. That's the important thing, is to understand that when you look at these conservatives and liberals talking heads on Fox, on CNN, and on MSNBC, and maybe even Al Jazeera, it's important to understand something, okay? Their point of view is they want you to tune into their station. And the best way to do that is to create some conflict, to create some sizzle with the steak. So if you hear about, let's say you go read Gawker or some other, or Yahoo, or some other news website that's not the mainstream, is you see on your friends liberal, your Facebook liberal friends pages, or your Facebook conservative friends page, you see, oh, this segment, there was these two guys arguing and they had a big tussle, blah, blah, they were talking a lot of crap about each other, blah, and they had a big dust up and blah, 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 blah. It's that, the whole point is they're not talking about the actual story. It's talking about two guys fussing at each other and having an argument. They're not talking about what really went down, okay? And the perception, in my opinion, is the media is not really informative anymore. It's entertainment. And this is where print journalism is really not stepping up to the plate and really exploiting this opportunity to really take, this is where I think, in my opinion, we need to have more promotion of long piece, well thought out journalism about not rushing to judgment, basically getting the stories, putting them together, and then writing it out. Do you have to constantly have people on the scene in Ferguson to tell you every little thing that goes on? We got to get somebody to talk for about 7 minutes on this segment. Go find some eyewitness or some person that was at the protest or some expert, blah, 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 that comes out of the woodwork. Do you really know? I mean, I could be an expert if you really want some of these stories. Okay, let's talk about ISIS for a second. Yeah, it's unfortunate James Foley was beheaded. We feel for his family. We grieve for them. But James Foley was a professional journalist, photojournalist. When you go into a war zone, there are risks. Journalism is not about being safe. You're going to butt heads with some people sometimes. It's not always going to, the person you're going to interview is not always going to be going, oh, I'll tell you everything. Here's my side of the story. Because if they got something to hide, there's good gotcha journalism and there's bad gotcha journalism. Good gotcha is the stuff where you have evidence that somebody's doing something wrong, and you find out about it and you've got the evidence and you're giving them an opportunity to have a say about what's going on. Well, that's good. Bad is basically trying to create a story by, or like, somebody's got an unproven allegation and you're sticking a camera in their face. It's really, really crazy. But here's the thing. ISIS wants to provoke a war with the United States. Do they have the capability to attack the United States right now? I don't think they have the capability right now to launch the kind of attack they would like. Could they launch a small-scale attack? Probably. I'm sure they've got agents in the United States. If they don't, then they're not nearly as gifted as they think they are. But let's remember this, and I want everyone to remember. We cannot assume we're going to be able to run in there and save the day. Okay? We can't run in there and save the day assuming that, like we did in Iraq in 2003, we thought we could go in there and be greeted as liberators. What happened? We were stuck there for 8 years. And the only reason we're not there anymore is because the Iraqi government signed a deal with Bush, by the way, to have our troops moved out of Iraq by the end of 2011. It doesn't matter if it's Bush or Obama signed it. You know, the Iraqi government did not want our forces there anymore. So it was Iraq that said, hey, we don't need you anymore. Go home. We did. This cropped up. It didn't even crop up in Iraq. It cropped up in Syria. Now people say, well, we should have gone into Syria. We would have been bogged down there. There are people who want us to go in militarily. And you think Iraq was bad? Look where this is all taking place. Northern Iraq. During the Iraq War, before the Iraq War actually started, there was a lot of tension with Turkey because Turkey was on the fence about letting American troops use bases in southeastern Turkey to invade Iraq. And finally decided, no, we're not going to let you do it. I think a lot of that was because they were afraid the Kurds would, who they've been battling because Kurds want a homeland of their own and the Turks don't want to give them any land. So that's part of the reason why, is because they didn't want the Kurds to get on the good side of the Americans. At the end of the conflict, the Americans say, hey, you know what? If you want to have some peace, give the Kurds their own homeland. We'll carve out some northern Iraq that the Iraqis don't want. And here's the thing. ISIS knows all of this. That's why they're attacking ruthlessly. Because they want to provoke a war. They want the United States, the so-called Great Satan, to come down there and get bogged down. Okay, that's their dream. They want to take on the United States. They may lose, but hey, they're going to be a martyr. They're going to go to heaven, get their 72 virgins. What do they got to lose? In their mind, that's the problem people don't understand in this war. We're fighting against the enemy. It doesn't matter. They don't care if they die, as long as they take some of us with them. Every other war we fought before then, the enemy has had a fairly decent concept of, hey, I want to get out of this war and kind of come home alive. The only time we've ever faced something similar to this was the Japanese kamikaze pilots. And that was specifically against, running a plane into a ship. That they weren't running planes into buildings on the west coast of the United States. They weren't, although that might have been a plan that somebody may have had that got shot down for logistical reasons. But the fact is that in World War II, the Japanese were losing. This was their plan to try and even the odds by having their pilots essentially become flying bombs, guided bombs into these carriers, into these cruisers, destroyers, battleships, and whatnot. So, but yet the pilots, they're just following orders. They knew exactly what they're getting into. They probably didn't want to die, but they realized, hey, they gotta serve their country. They were fighting for their country. They were fighting, they weren't going after innocent civilians. They were going after military targets. Okay? ISIS, their idea is, let's go after everybody. If you're not on their version of Islam, I should say their version of Islam, you got to die. And they're not afraid to kill and not afraid to really torture people. They've literally crucified people. Their idea is to scare people. Okay? That's what terrorism is. It's not just killing people. It's killing people in a way that scares other people to cave in. And this is what the media doesn't really get, in my opinion. Some do, most don't. Terrorism isn't about the actual act itself, okay? Terrorism is the fear of a potential act, or after an attack has occurred, the potential for another one. Remember the days after 9/11, when we were afraid of another attack. We were paranoid. We had the anthrax scare. That was proven to have nothing to do with the original attacks. Not directly. And remember, there hasn't been a legitimate attack against the United States since then, in a sense of directly on American soil. Have there been attacks on our embassies? Of course. There were 8 during the Bush administration. There was, of course, the Benghazi attack, which for some reason, the Republicans tend to forget that 8 attacks on our embassies, and yet this is the one they pick about because it's the wrong guy is in office, according to them. And so, they have to find some. And the Benghazi thing has been so overblown. Were there mistakes made? Probably. Could they have done a better job of protecting our embassy? Probably. But you have to remember, first of all, it's in a foreign country. And if the regulations that the Libyans laid out were for Marines not to be armed, or not to have bullets in their gun, then the United States, out of diplomatic courtesy, was going to probably do that because they were trying to build good relations with Turkey. Well, excuse me, not with Turkey, but with Libya. Now, if do we just go, well, we don't really care? This is the problem that a lot of conservatives don't understand. We talk about a lot in this country about sovereign America, keeping America's sovereignty and all this. And yet, when it comes to the sovereignty of another nation, when it involves our country, we just go, oh, we don't care. Like with the Marine down in Mexico that's been arrested. And these conservatives are pressuring Obama to get this Marine free. Even though the Marine knowingly took weapons across, he wasn't confused. I've known people that have lived in San Diego and told me about the border. It's well lit. There's plenty of signs. There are ways to turn around. Excuse me. My apologies. There are ways to turn around before you get to the border. So the story that he accidentally went in there is pretty much bogus. The real story is he's up to something, And since he got caught by the Mexican police, they've come up with a story that the conservative media are all over because, hey, it's one of our Marines. We got to get him out, without really looking at the story, because they don't really want to look at the story. They want to have a reason to go after Obama. They don't care if the story's true, false, blatantly false, completely twisted, blah, 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 blah. They want to do whatever they can to make Obama look bad. If it means blatantly lying, they'll do it. That's Fox News. That's conservative talk radio. Okay? This guy went in to a foreign country with weapons, and we're supposed to ignore Mexican sovereignty. We're supposed to tell Mexico, well, this American does not have to follow your laws. This American does not have to be punished for the crimes he committed, but yet we want to punish Mexicans who come across our border illegally. That makes a lot of sense. We want your citizens who come here illegally to follow our laws, but if our citizens go overseas or go across the border, they don't have to follow your laws. Okay? And the media, they don't play up. They either go way too simplistically, and in Fox News they basically only take one particular side of the story. Because, hey, it's a Marine. He's trapped in Mexico. He was arrested in Mexico for allegedly, and he really didn't mean to go across the border. He got confused because he had PTSD. When pretty much anybody that I've known in San Diego over the years has told me that it's pretty damn impossible to just accidentally go across the border drive across the border there. Okay? And here's the problem with conservative talk radio. They're not real media. Their whole point is, okay, this is our viewpoint. These are our talking points. Let's try and make the facts fit the agenda. Okay? If you get your news from conservative talk radio, you're getting a slanted view. They're far worse than the so-called liberal media. And the fact they pull in all these ratings is because it's not because they're telling you the truth. It's because they're pissing you off. They're making you angry, and you like that feeling. And you tune in. Because, hey, I don't like what the president's doing, and blah, 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 blah. And I don't like these Republican mainstreamers, Republican establishment. They're not really representing me, blah, blah. They know the audience they're targeting. They don't want to tell you the truth. They want you to tune in, and they'll do what they can to piss you off. It's been conservative talk radio even before the Fairness Doctrine ended. There were talk show hosts who got popular not because they were well informed and entertaining and all this and really made you think. They wanted to piss you off. They told you their side of the story, their facts, their version of things, and they wanted you to get mad. Are liberal talk show hosts the same way? Of course. If you got a political agenda, you're not going to tell all the facts. You're not going to tell the other guy's side of the story because you want your audience to follow what you tell them. That's political talk radio right there. Conservative and liberal. Okay? And it's popular because people like to be pissed off and against the powers that be. They don't like, they so-called want to call truth to power, but the reality is if you really want to know the truth, Mike Gallagher, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and all these other conservative talk show hosts, do they really want a Republican president, a Republican Senate, a Republican House? No, not really. Because then what would they bitch about? Oh, they're not going far right enough? They want somebody to complain about. Oh, they managed because they kept picking at the liberals on the when they were in the minority for 2001 to early 2007. Okay? It's so stupid. It really is. And what really is shocking is that the media doesn't go after these conservative talk show hosts and call them out for their blatant... Now, Huffington Post does, and some other sites do, but they tend to be left-wing, going after right-wing talk show hosts, right-wing liberal, right-wing, if I can say it, right-wing news sites go after left-wing political talk shows. So it's almost like a wash, So, anyhow, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you because, quite honestly, this Ferguson situation is finally starting to calm down, thank God. Will it stay calmed down? That remains to be seen, because if there's another shooting, heaven forbid, it could become a big deal. Now we've got U.S. possibly launching more airstrikes on ISIS, this time in Syria. And, and the real question you have to ask yourself is this. What happens if all of a sudden this becomes a political talking point? We got to go into Iraq again to destroy ISIS. Okay? Think about this. If ISIS were to try and attack, say, Jordan or Lebanon, and the whole goal is to eventually take over to where they can attack Israel. And that's something they'd love to do. Because to ISIS, their religious words, they feel like they're fighting on the side of good. And in their mind, and if you've ever followed professional wrestling, the best kind of villains are the ones who believe they're doing good. In their mind, they're the good guy. They're not the bad guy, they're the good guy. Why are these people booing? I'm doing good stuff. In ISIS's mind, they're doing their Lord's will, their Allah's will. They're doing Allah's will. In their viewpoint, hey, why are you getting on us for stoning these adulterous women? We're just following the rules. That's their viewpoint. And there are people who are sympathetic, or those who don't like ISIS hate us even more. So we just jumping into this, it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. What can we do? We go in there trying to fight a war. Yeah, we may we'll probably wipe the floor with ISIS, but the remains of them will just pick us off like they did in Iraq. And this, instead of being in Iraq, we're going to be in Iraq, Syria, maybe Jordan, perhaps even parts of Turkey, and maybe even Iran. If we go into Iran, that's going to cause a hell of a lot of conflicts. Pardon me for just a second. I need a refreshment break. And here's the thing. The media would love to have another war. War equals ratings. The news networks made a killing, pun intended, even though not literally. They made a fortune on the Iraq War. And if you think for 1 second that they're going, well, we don't really want to see people die. They don't care about people dying. Not the people in the boardrooms and the executive offices and such. If a war gives them ratings, they want to see it. They want that. If you look back at the Persian Gulf War, the opening, it was massive for CNN. They loved it. Huge ratings. The second one, BAFO ratings for CNN, BAFO ratings for Fox News, BAFO ratings for MSNBC, even for the broadcast networks. Even when they were basically not really following the kind of journalistic and standards that Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite did in World War II. They were embedded. They were told by the military what they could or could not produce. They didn't have those same restrictions in World War II. They didn't even have it in Vietnam. You know why they had embedded reporters? They had the embedded reporters back during the first Gulf War, back in 91. Because the military wanted to make sure that the war was seen from a positive PR. And here's the thing that you're going to really, really understand right now. The media isn't interested in telling all the stories, the whole truth. They're only interested in ratings. That's cable news, that's broadcast news. Wars bring a lot of viewpoints. That's why 11 years ago when the when the Iraq War was going on, it was all over the place, all over the internet, all over CNN, MSNBC. They love that stuff. The next one, if there's a next one, oh my God, live streaming from a tank. You can see live streaming from a tank. That's what they're going to push for. And the military is going to give it to them because, hey, as long as they get a chance to say, hey, what goes and what doesn't go, it's PR. There are people in this country who love the fact when we're at war because they make money. And it's not just the arms manufacturers that make money. It's not the typical traditional military contracts that make money. It's media makes money. That's why they want a war. And I learned this 35 years ago with the Iran hostage crisis. Network news got tremendous ratings because every day people would tune in to either CBS News with Walter Cronkite, ABC News with Frank Reynolds, Max Robinson, and Peter Jennings, World News Tonight, or NBC with David Brinkley and John Chancellor. They had the famous countdown on Walter Cronkite. Ted Koppel got his own show, Nightline, after the local news at 11 o'clock. And that was an institution for the longest time. And the fact is that it would still be around if ABC didn't have success with Jimmy Kimmel's show. How ironic is it that a show that used to gain BAFO ratings when Ted Koppel... There's a reason ABC kept that show on forever, because a lot of times Nightline would outrank in the ratings David Letterman and Jay Leno, especially if there's a huge news story breaking. And in a lot of cases, if there's a big news story going on, like the Challenger disaster, the Gulf War, Chernobyl, the fall of the Berlin Wall, yada yada yada, people would tune in. News makes ratings when bad stuff, big news happens. I'm just thinking here for a moment about how crazy it is that we live in a nation where the media has gone really, really, really insane. It's gone away from traditional journalistic standards, and it's more about getting it first, getting it fast, and beating out the other guy with the breaking news. It's been on the local news for the longest time. That's why local news, I don't even watch it. Because in a lot of cases they're wanting to provoke you as well. The whole point of a newscast these days is to provoke you to watch it. That's why the teasers are as bad as they are. Coming up at 6, is your child in danger of getting killed by a slip and slide? Find out at 5 o'clock on Channel 10. Those kind of promos. You're going, oh my God! And they always find a way to keep you watching until they show the story. And by that time, the weather's on because you want to watch the weather, and then the sports are on. You kind of want to watch it, and then you want to watch that fun little story they have at the end. That little cutesy little story that goes, hey, it's a nice little story. You want to find out. There's a formula for all of this, folks. If you think, oh well, why don't they cover the very important board meeting they have here? It's because board meetings are boring unless there's a really big controversy that's like pissing off people, and you've got the boardroom packed. If it's just another humdrum county commissions meeting over the budget, yeah, there might be a few people honked off, but you're not going to get wall-to-wall people in there. City council meetings, for the most part, you don't have a whole lot of people there, depending on the size of the room. So, frankly, I think there should be more people at these meetings, but people have lives, and I could go on into why, community leaders don't want people at these meetings. But that's beside the point. That's for another broadcast. And let me tell you our situation. As you know, I have been having some very difficult financial times. This may be our last broadcast for some time. I simply don't know. I'm about to lose internet. I'm about to move. I don't know where yet. I hope that the place I go to has some Wi-Fi that I can use. I don't like calling it steal, because if it's an unsecured Wi-Fi, you're basically inviting people to use it. And I'm one of those people, hey, if I can cut a few bucks for somebody, I'll piggyback on their Wi-Fi. This may be our last broadcast for a while. I don't know. It's getting cut off Monday. I can't afford to pay it. And we may have another broadcast between now and then. I simply don't know. And I have been very stressed out. And it's been to the point where I've had to actually start seeing a therapist. I started actually today. And And I'm hoping things turn around because I have been very, very stressed to the point where it's just I'm miserable, irritable, cranky. I've lost the only reason I even do these is sometimes to just rant. And I could be better prepared at these. I know I could probably do a whole lot better. But the fact is, I'd sometimes just need to rant. Okay? And it feels good sometimes to be able to rant. And that's what I'm doing right now, is ranting about this. And I hope that we're back together again really, really soon. Hope I can talk on a much more regular basis. But it's been hard. I probably should have done more shows like this, but it's one of those things I really, there have been times I've really not wanted to talk to anybody because I've been so depressed over my situation. And the hard part is when you're trying your absolute best to find a job that actually you can keep your head above water and maybe even have a little something extra. It's hard to find those kind of... last year at this time I was working 2 jobs. I was working 72 hours a week. Sometimes more. Stressing me the hell out. For the last 3 months of my day job, I was working part-time because I just could not handle the stress. I was doing my absolute best to try and find a way to deal with it, and I just got to the point my health was becoming a concern. First time in my life I ever had high blood pressure. First time I ever had migraines on a regular basis. I'm not talking about once every 3 or 4 months like I had at Walmart. I'm talking about once or twice, sometimes even more than twice a week. I was having anxiety attacks at the very thought of going into work. I was having anxiety attacks as soon as I put on the headset for my call center job. I remember the last couple of days I worked, I was so anxiety-ridden that I just could not handle the job anymore. I was literally shaking. And that had never happened to me before. It was scary. It really was. And ever since then, I had been trying to find another job, and I lost my security job in the end of February. And I had a seasonal job at Lowe's, and I couldn't get permanent there. So it's been very tough. I've run out of my unemployment because for some reason North Carolina decided to make sure that you couldn't get federal emergency unemployment because they cut back all the weeks. Now it's only 14 weeks. Used to be you get 26, then they cut it to 19. Now it's 14 weeks. And trust me, I have been looking hard for another job. Okay? Either I'm overqualified for some jobs, I'm underqualified for others. I'm not a CNA. I can't apply for a CNA job. But at the same time, if I apply to McDonald's, they're probably thinking, he's not going to stay here long. As soon as he gets a better job, he'll be gone, you know. So, it's been some very hard times. And I have been really, really, you know, I'm about to lose my apartment. I'm not sure what's going to happen after that. So, yeah, it's really, really tough. And I wish that I had a better answer. We're going to go a little bit longer than an hour. I really didn't want to go here, but it's sort of emotional right now because it's been an emotional day. It's been a very emotional time for me because it's like, you know, you've listened to plenty of these shows if you've been a regular listener, and even though I tend to be very free-flowing and, you know, fly by the seat of my pants, you can pretty much judge I'm a pretty intelligent guy. I live in a very rural area, and there aren't a whole lot of jobs out there. The ones that they have, there's a lot of competition for. So, and in some cases, people are getting second jobs, in some cases, third jobs. And you're having to compete against those people because they can't keep head above water with just one job. So, and I had 2 jobs at this time last year, and I was still struggling. So, if this is the last broadcast, if you've listened this long, I want to thank you for tuning in. I wish we had a better forum to where I could actually take... The reason I'm on Spreaker is because Blog Talk, up until recently, forced you to have to do it at a particular time. And I like being able just to hop on here, do my thing, and be able to hop off whenever. I didn't have to be confined to 30 minutes. Actually, I can do up to 5 hours on this thing. And actually, I'm thinking about, if I've got the time, Saturday or Sunday, of just doing a 5-hour 80s marathon. So that might be something we do. Folks, it's been a great time. If this is the last time for a while, I want to thank you. I'm not giving up too easily. Trust me, I'm not going to do anything harsh, but rash, I should say. But it may be a few weeks, it may be a few months, I don't know, it may be a few days. I just have to find a new place. I have to find a new job. Probably find 2 jobs to try and get out of the hole I'm in. And just hope that I can finally get the time again to do these shows. Or maybe tonight I'll hit Mega Millions. I actually bought a ticket because I figured at the very least, as I'm heading home, I can dream about winning. And let me tell you, if I were to win, a lot of people like to blow their money. I've never been a really... Even when I had money, I didn't really... I had my moments where I splurged, but I'm not a guy that's going to spend thousands of dollars on something. Except for maybe for travel. And even then, I'm going to be kind of, okay... I'm going to make sure I get a good deal. I'm going to make sure I don't spend way too much. But basically, once I have a nice house, and a couple of good cars that aren't really way over expensive. Basically, I'm one of those people, I like a car that actually works and gets good gas mileage. I'm old enough to where I don't want a sports car because, first of all, I can't get into it to begin with, as I'm a big, stocky guy. And secondly, I just want something that's comfortable to drive. So if I were to win tonight, which I'm not expecting to, but it would be nice if I did, I'd probably just take a long vacation, buy a nice little house, a couple of cars, travel some, and get really into my writing and podcast. I'd probably be doing this hours at a time. I can basically see myself have a nice place of my own, getting up every morning at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, just planning out the broadcast, having my little iPad, whatever, and go, okay, here we go. We're going to talk about some stuff today. Maybe play a few tunes, maybe do it that way, and just have some fun. That'd be awesome. So, anyhow, I'm going to get off here. This is the last time for a while. I want to thank you guys again, like I've been saying. And as we always say here, for everybody here at RSN Studios, which is just me, I like saying it that way. Good night, good luck, and may the good news be yours.